there is a knock at the door. A very familiar knock. You know that knock.
Father?
Anastasia, darling, may I come in?
Of course, Papa. Come on in.
Yeah. Anastasia, I apologize, but something has arisen which very much requires my attention, and you know, darling, you know I would not just leave by any mere whim. This is rather important. I'm asking you to keep a responsible yet respectful eye on your brother.
Okay. I can keep an eye on him. Will you be long?
Hopefully not. I'm hoping to be back by the morning, possibly the next day.
Oh, well, that's all right then.
Can you give me a psychology roll? Charlotte, you can do the same if you like. Being in the room and being witness to the conversation.
Okay.
Anastasia has a psychology of 10.
And Charlotte has 20. No, that's a 63 for me. That's a fail.
She rolled a 34. We are both too self-involved. We're like, you're going to be busy all evening anyway. We won't miss you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, firstly, you believe that he'll be back either in the morning or the next day. But secondly, you take him at face value at what he's saying. That he is away on business, it's urgent, it's something that he must deal with. You very much understand that. Mm-hmm. You don't read anything further into it, because surely there's nothing that you need to read further into it. Surely
Why would he lie?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why
Papa
would
doesn't lie to me. I lie to him. This is a relationship.
And we probably never get to hear anything about his business dealings anyway, so...
Quite right.
What we care.
Goes over our head. No, exactly. We've got more important things to think about.
The only things you do here is usually from a slightly inebriated Thomas, or possibly from one of Anastasia's many people within her network that she has within the staff. Maybe occasionally Isaac, because Isaac is aware, Anastasia, of what you're doing, but you know how loyal he is to your father.
Yeah.
But it is your father in that moment who says, Anastasia, just as I said, look after your brother. And your uncle is downstairs. For God's sake, get some clothes on, darling. Go and say hi to your uncle. He's down there with his son and you know, your auntie Maria. Just go and say hello. Go and tell her that she's playing some wonderful music. It's a god-awful song, but you know, just go and just tell her it's wonderful. And you know, Edward apparently is into astrology, and much like your uncle, go and socialize in the expected way, Anastasia.
So, mother my brother, entertain my uncle, and lie to my aunt. Is that right?
You are the perfect daughter, Anastasia.
Very well.
You always have been, and you always will be. My darling, he comes into the room at this moment. He takes your hands and he just kisses the top of your hand. A Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just lets your hands go. He turns and he walks out of the room. He trots down the stairs. It's only a moment later, Reverend, when you see your brother once again return to the lounge. This time you see that he has a coat, a traveling coat. Rather large cuffs, rather large neckline, buttons wrapped around. It's not quite done up yet, but you can see that he very much is dressed in a style of travel. Okay. And he arrives at the lounge door and gives a rather unceremonious kind of knock on the arch of the door.
Ah, brother, you joining us for some cards?
I would love to, George. There's nothing better than cheating a man of the cloth at cards, but I am afraid I will have to leave that to my son. You are in there now, Thomas. Are you in there, or have you gone somewhere else first? Please, you tell me.
Thomas, I think, will have left the study, and as much as Thomas is a little annoyed with another lecture from Father, probably would go and see cousin, especially if there is rumour of cards being played as well.
You're probably the one that started the cards. You went in there and probably said,
we're
"Let's
sitting
play
there playing
cards."
Pharaoh around the table. It's great fun.
Okay, so Thomas has gone in whilst Adam was upstairs talking to Anastasia and Charlotte. Isaac is packing the bag. The good Reverend George and Thomas are playing cards. Maria playing cards? Has she been invited
Maria
to this
is
game?
trying to remember the tune she overheard. She's from her friend. It's not quite coming together. She only heard it a couple of times.
Okay.
But she's trying to figure out what this music teacher that her friend knows was trying to put together.
Okay, I'm sure she'll work it out at some point. I'm sure it'll be a bit of a stellar tune. Thomas, you're dealing essentially. You're running the card game. You've suggested it as a bit of a momentary. Should we play some cards? But now you're running it like you're in a gambling house.
Oh, yeah.
You've even got Edward involved, much to your uncle's. Well, Uncle George, how do you feel about Edward joining in on this round of cards?
He's a little hesitant, but he probably knows if anyone is going to teach him how to cheat, or at least win at cards, it'll be Master Thomas, and he'll go to university one of these days, and he can't be shy of the world of these games. And after all, we're only playing for matchsticks.
Exactly. It's a life learning lesson. Thomas, for you, matchsticks, it's just as important as pounds and shillings and pence.
Oh, absolutely.
It is. You want those matchsticks. Do you know what? I think I'm going to ask for a gambling roll.
Oh, excellent.
I think we're just gonna throw it out there and just do it.
That is a 54 under 60.
Is that the same as a gaming role?
I assumed
for
it would be.
gambling?
Yes, it is. Sorry, yeah, it just got tied up in the whole gambling nature. So, okay, 54 over 60. Okay, is gaming something that Uncle George, Reverend George, has ever kind of invested any time in? Does he have any?
He hasn't invested any time at all. So he is base value and rolled a 31, so he is down a couple of matchsticks and is wondering quite what happened.
Okay, Thomas, yeah, you're very much kind of cleaning up, and you have an overwhelming sense of the thrill of winning. These matchsticks are yours. This is it. It's another opportunity. This is how you're going to win your money back, so that the next time you lose money, you can pay it off. You're not going to pay it off by your family's income or the salary that the estate gathers from the farmland. It's gambling. That's your future. That's what your friends do. It's what your friends' fathers do. Your father's the oddity. Yeah? He doesn't gamble. It's everybody else that does. He's the one that's not with it, not fashionable.
Next time I face Lord Cosgrove across the table, I've got him. There's no escaping.
And as soon as you have that thought about Lord Cosgrove, your father's standing there in his travelling coat in the doorway, and you're doing the one thing that he pressed upon you not to do. Or not to do, but to do responsibly. But you are rinsing your uncle and your cousin. They have minimal matchsticks left. Your father walks in. George, Maria, Edward, Thomas, we've spoken. Thomas. I am incredibly sorry, hugely apologetic. There is a matter of urgency that has arisen, and I'm so sorry, George. But if you will stay a day or two, I'll be back. You have rooms. You know you have rooms. Edward has the library. And George, you must use my study. You must, as your own place to read, to explore your own religious spirituality, astronomy, whatever it is that you'd like to do. The study is yours. Thomas, make sure that your Uncle George has use of the study, will you?
Of course, Uncle. Father.
Yes. Drinking, Thomas?
Just a couple of sherries to sweeten the evening.
You know drinking is something I frown upon.
Only in moderation, Father. Sorry. I promise you.
Yes, well.
That's all right. No, brother, don't worry about us. We will be absolutely fine. A couple of days, you say? Go and do what you need to do. It must be very urgent, otherwise you wouldn't leave us at this fine occasion to go off with, well... and he sort of like pauses for a moment to allow him to say where he is going.
I appreciate your gesture, George. Always the most forgiving. I will pass on your regards, George. Farewell. George, just as... And I'm aware that I'm using a very familiar skill over and over again. I just feel like this is the perfect setup to continually use this skill. Apologies, listeners who are going, my God, does he not know any other skills? But I feel I really want psychology or psychoanalysis. I think it's psychology, but I keep using psychology. Tell you what, I'm going to ask for psychology, but if you can think of something else. No, there is something else. Okay.
Hang on. I think we can get to use...
I was going to say, give me an intelligence roll.
How about we use one of the new skills?
Ooh.
And see whether he is dropping outside of the norms of society by skedaddling from his family at this point, and maybe an etiquette roll.
Yes, what a lovely idea. An etiquette roll. I thought you were going to say mesmerism then. Yes, absolutely. Let's use etiquette. Let's see if that's if there's something here that's beyond the norm of the society. Obviously, the information that I give you will reflect society's norms here, as opposed to a state of mind psychological role or intelligence, you know, what you know about the situation. But let's roll an etiquette roll. That sounds like a fantastic idea.
Okay, his etiquette is quite good, and yes, he gets a hard success.
Ooh.
Not quite extreme, but not too far off. He rolled 16 out of his 70 etiquette. The Reverend is very prim and proper and understands quite
regards to the Reverend's prim and proper approach to, you've been invited here to your brother's house. They're throwing a New Year's Eve party. They're expecting guests. He is the lord of the house. The fact that he is leaving, it's significant in regards to etiquette. And I'm actually tempted to have Adam Prideaux make a reputation roll. It is close family.
Say, George is thinking of what on earth could possibly draw this kind of well-respected gentleman away from his family on such a prestigious occasion.
Okay, you've seen a moment flicker in his eyes. You've seen a moment of him falter, but his eyes meet yours. He sees your upstanding etiquette mindset, and he addresses it openly and respectably. Brother, I am sorry. The house is yours. Thomas will make sure everything is seen to that you need. My man Isaac Chambers, he will make sure that your wife and your son have everything they need. I do apologize, and I recognize the poor behavior in which it is to invite you to a party and then abandon it myself. But I ask in my stead that you, along with Thomas and Anastasia, act as host to see in this new year that I believe, and as our Prime Minister Spencer Percival has said, he's leaning now on the book that he gave you and the signature and the reputation, and that Spencer Percival has said will be the most rewarding and prosperous new year that any of us have seen.
Indeed, brother. Indeed. We all of us underneath this house will keep the reputation of the Prideaux family spotless for this marvelous opportunity that presents itself in this brand new year.
His eyes flicker towards Thomas.
Thomas rolls his eyes and downs another sherry.
Very good. Happy New Year, one and all. And he turns and he strolls out the door, hopefully to meet you, Isaac, standing by the front door with his bag, his travelling clothes.
Yep, I've got everything ready, just waiting. Sir, I've got everything for you. Could I ask, is everything okay? Sorry if it's not my place.
No, Isaac. Behind closed doors, when it's just you and I, you know your place is as honourable as mine. This is, and I'd ask you not to speak to the Reverend about this, but this is a family matter. This is something that has long needed to be resolved. Isaac, I'm going home. Don't tell the others. Don't tell my children. Not yet, not now. It's not right. I don't want them there. I'll see you soon, Isaac.
Of course, sir.
Look after my children.
Of course.
And Adam takes his bag. He walks out to the carriage. The shadowed individual opens the door, pulls the stair down. You see Adam climb up into the carriage. Anastasia, from your bedroom window, you can see your father downstairs walking across the gravels, climbing up into the carriage. Thomas, the moment you put your hand down that you've won, you and Reverend George, for a moment out of the large bay windows of the living room, can see your father/brother climb into the carriage. You see a moment where he looks back. It's almost as if he looks at each of you in turn, but he looks at the house, the thing that represents this family. And then he ducks into the shadows. The stairs are lifted, the door is shut, the driver jumps, you hear the whip, you hear the horses whinny, you hear them pull off and the wheels crunching in the gravel, and it's a moments later when the horse-drawn carriage has left. Shepford Manor is absent its lord. A few hours pass, drinks are handed around, cards go on. Anastasia and Charlotte come downstairs. You join the lounge. More people arrive. The party spills into the ballroom. There's the gardens. I'd like you each to describe a moment or a scene, either on your own or with another member of the family here, during this New Year's Eve. We're approaching midnight, so there's been many drinks, many conversations. There's been many suitors that have thrown themselves at Anastasia, a few delightful, delectable women that have paraded themselves near or in front of Thomas, hoping that he might ask them to dance. Charlotte, there has been the odd gentleman who has wandered past your particular wiles, but you're looking for the right someone.
Absolutely.
Isaac, you have navigated both Thomas and Anastasia's individual suitors in many aspects, and the good Reverend. You have toured your family around, but they're having their own time. You find that Maria's off with lots of the ladies. Your son is off with some of the younger gentlemen that Thomas is kind of introducing him to, and you find yourself walking around, meeting and greeting, representing the family since Adam's not here. I'm gonna go to Charlotte. Charlotte, what is it that you're doing during these final moments of the year, these final moments of this wonderful year of our Lord, 1810?
Well, Charlotte is trying to essentially look in two directions at once. She's trying to find somebody suitable for Anastasia, and as we've also said, she's kind of on the lookout as well for somebody for herself. She made an extremely unwise marriage about 10 years ago, but being a widow now, she's just starting to come back out into society, and she's hoping to do better the next time.
Okay.
So she's trying to, within the bounds of proprietary, she's trying to give a nice smile to any gentleman who looks suitable, but not trying to give them too much of a come on. That would be very unwise and far too scandalous.
Could I ask you to give me an etiquette roll? See how well you're
can.
doing this, considering your historical reputation.
Yes.
Ms. Lambert.
Yes. Too many French poets.
Something we've all said in our time, I think.
Well, clearly there's one too many glasses of champagne, because that's a fail. That was a 46 against her 29. Sadly.
Okay.
That's a fail.
Wow. Okay. Okay. You see a gentleman approaching Anastasia, and you think for a moment that this higher lauded gentleman, this man of the gentry, possibly even acquainted to the ton, you think for a moment, I better step in there and have a word on Anastasia's behalf. But also, this might be an opportunity for me to say something to this gentleman. But unfortunately, Ms. Lambert, you start the conversation by talking about Lord Adam Prideaux's absence.
Oh dear.
Which is quite the societal faux pas, considering the circumstances. The young gentleman kind of walks up to Anastasia, but you intercede. How is it that you start that conversation?
I think she will just put a hand briefly on his forearm, not too forward, but just forward enough to say, I'm interested, and just sort of say, what a wonderful evening it's been, hasn't it? It's a shame that his lordship has affairs of business that keep him from being here.
Yeah, wonderful evening. Wonderful evening. Sorry, your lordship's affairs?
Ah, yes, a business, some sort of business trip. I wouldn't know.
And you're not talking about Thomas with his the cards?
Oh, the cards? No. This is Adam, of course, the lord of the house. He's had to leave, apparently.
What? The master of the house at his own ball has left?
Well, it must have been something terribly important, of course.
Something terrible indeed. What a word. Are you okay? Have you're not too put out by this desertion at such an important part of the year?
Well, we do what we must, sir.
Anastasia, I'm going to ask you for a listen roll to see if you kind of hear this societal slander of your father.
Oops.
Apparently not, even though I thought I was literally next to them, but
Actually, no, I did describe you as being next to them. I'm going to give just
apparently
as a turn of good faith, I'll give you a bonus die considering you're next to them. But if you fail that, it's because you're staring into the distance.
Fair enough. Yeah, my second roll was a fumble, so thankfully it was a bonus die, so the fumble doesn't count.
You are staring into the distance.
Honestly, I do not like this guy. I'm actively trying to zone him out. He seems slimy.
Stefan is talking to Ms. Lambert here, and he kind of takes your hand in one, and then takes your hand in the cups your hand in one over the top of the other. Ms. Lambert, I am appalled at the Lord of the Manor's behaviour, and that you would be so shocked by this. I feel this is an absolute desertion of responsibility, especially in this such fine environment with such wonderful guests. Who would invite guests to their house and then abandon it with such wanton neglect?
And Charlotte's smile freezes just a little, realizing that she's made a terrible mistake.
Perhaps you might not understand, Mr.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, what it must be like to have multiple responsibilities besides showing one's face in social occasions and trying to seduce young women. But I must say, father has more important things to do than just that. But of course, do feel free to keep judging him. It
Okay,
makes a great impression.
What would you intend? Is that an intimidation roll? It's not a charm roll, I can tell you that.
I think it's whatever the opposite of etiquette is.
Regency girl code.
Yeah, Regency gangster. I think what we've got there.
I don't have social skills.
I think.
But if insult is a skill,
if insult is a thing. I think. Unless you've got something else you'd like to use, give me intimidation.
Fast talk is the closest, but
fast talk could be good.
I don't have that
well,
either.
Fast talk is more of convincing something. I suppose you are.
It's talking fast to bamboozle someone as well, not just lying.
you're, and with that, you're there. You know, you're very much dropping the young lady, your reputation. So I think there's either intimidate or fast talk. You give me what you want.
I'll go with fast talk. I have a little bit of that. I did fail, however, because I don't have social skills.
Then he lets go of Ms. Lambert's hand and turns to you, Anastasia, and says, yeah, well, if your father's not here to put his foot down and dictate the rules of this evening's events, those of us that would talk to young ladies and see if they're willing to dance this evening, perhaps, my lady, you would put me on your card as number one.
That is highly presumptuous of you, Miss
Thank
Jenkins. That is not a compliment. However, you may dance with yourself and with your own 2 feet that you feel you're entitled to put down.
Thank you very much for your conversation this evening, Miss Anastasia, and I bid you a good evening.
Anastasia has locked him as a target. If at any point he gets too drunk, she will be stealing something of him.
Okay. I would say if that were any more public, that would be a reputation roll because of the severe verbal beating that you gave him. I would argue that would be.
That was a burn. Absolutely. I love it.
And Miss Lambert's Charlotte, you've watched that. You've seen Anastasia bark off that young man. Thomas, where are you during this New Year's Eve celebrations? We're getting close now. You can see people going, come on, we've got like 2 minutes. Come on, everybody. And they're all kind of gathering on the ballroom floor and people are holding hands and you can see they're kind of still drinking, still a little bit of dancing, but there's about 2 or 3 minutes before we actually hit New Year's. Where's Thomas?
Thomas is in the billiard room with some of the younger gentlemen. Playing a game of billiards. In fact, no, Thomas is probably not playing the billiards. Father's lessons probably sunk in a little bit today, and I think with the sudden realization that Thomas is in charge of the house, Thomas is definitely more wary about the sort of impression that he gives. But he's definitely watching the billiards, and he's likely enjoying the conversation with, I don't know, probably a lieutenant from the local militia is here, of noble birth, a couple of the lords, younger lords as well, all in the same sort of situation, about to inherit or have just inherited a fortune. And I think occasionally Thomas will wistfully look out of the window, just the realization that all of this land one day will be his. It's a strange thought. He's not really thought about that before. But leaning on the rail at the side, looking out the window as the billiards goes on behind him.
Looking out the window, you look at the spot where your father got into the carriage. That's the spot. When you think about the future of this manor, when you think about the future of this family, it's that moment where your father stepped into the carriage. That's the penny dropping, or the shilling, should we say. That's the shilling dropping for you. That's the moment where you realize that your father's not going to be here forever. You hear the click of the billiards. You hear the throng of the party, the chat of the guests, the clapping, the dancing. It's a very reflective moment. I want to ask you for a roll, Thomas.
Is it a wake up and smell the coffee roll?
Is there a coffee roll? That would be good, wouldn't it? I think it's an intelligence roll.
Okay.
I like to use intelligence in a creative manner. I like to see it spread used
That
a bit
is
more.
a 68,
Over?
which is 3 above my 65. So I'm going to... No, I've only got 40 luck. I think I'm going to leave...
I'm going to
No, can I push this
fail.
intelligence roll?
Okay.
Can I push it?
Yeah, okay. To push the roll, you're going to remember the moment with your father in his study, and you are going to leave the billiard room, if you'd like to push this roll, and you are going to open the door to your father's study.
I will do that. That is a 22 under 65.
So there's something niggling at you about when you spoke to your father in his room, the books, the desk, everything going on. How do you make your excuses to leave the billiard room?
I think Thomas will dismiss the men with a... I've got to do the rounds, press the flesh and meet the guests. His father isn't here. You'll hold the fort without me, won't you, chaps? And with a little nod.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on, Thomas. Don't be back. Come back soon. Bring your purse.
With a quite little laugh, Thomas sidles out of the room towards the study door. The study door's probably quite a barrier almost to Thomas. It's the sort of memories of the lessons, the talk downs he's had in this room. But father isn't here now, so it's fair game, right?
Fair game. You open the door. There's the familiar click of the door. It opens. You step in, and your uncle is sitting in a chair opposite the actual desk itself. And it's Issac Chambers, the footman of the house, your father's number 2, who often he talks to about business affairs more than he does you, is standing at the bookcase. They're talking about your father's books. Your Uncle George, the good Reverend, is talking about how he's going to use the space for a little bit of his research, astronomy and both theology in the upcoming days whilst your father is away. But they're both in there. But Thomas, you walk in and they catch you. It's quite bizarre for Thomas to be sneaking off to the study. Uncle George and Isaac, the 3 of you in the room together, what do you do?
Master Thomas, shouldn't you be outside with our guests? I believe the hour is approaching.
My dear uncle, I could say the same for you. Surely your charming wife will be playing her piece soon to entertain us all. I'm sure that is something
she can remember it at all. You only heard it a couple of times, but no. I have to talk to Chambers here. You see, nothing for you to worry about, of course.
Father left me in charge of the house in his absence. Surely anything you can say to this man can be said in my presence.
Young boy, I do believe your father would have left the house to his brother, and that brother would be me, the Reverend, and you will address me as such whilst you speak to me. Is that understood?
Very good, sir.
Thank you. Now, We were talking about the books, and we were talking about the plans that we intend to use this study, weren't we, Chambers?
Yes, Mr. Prideaux. We were just trying to see how we could help out Mr. Prideaux to be able to use the study. Young Thomas, is there anything that I can do to help you?
Has my introspection led me to any particular conclusions or any particular desire to search for anything in this study?
There was a book your father put away when you were last in this room. A book that you had mistaken for a Bible, but wasn't such. Not in the true sense that you know, anyway.
I just thought after a talk with my father, I feel I should be looking into expanding my mind. There was a particular book that he mentioned that I was going to have a quick read of. If you don't mind me taking it, I'll leave you to your discussions.
Have we noticed any kind of Bible-like book?
You haven't, Reverend Thomas. You saw your father put it back on its shelf. You're welcome to make a spot hidden for me, please, Thomas. Isaac and George, Reverend George, if there's any rolls you'd like to make, you're very welcome to let me know.
Can I do a psychology roll?
On
Again,
Thomas,
I have
just to see.
an 85 over 50 for my spot hidden.
So an 85 over 50. Yes, you can make Isaac, you can make a psychology roll on Thomas. Thomas, you don't. You see that the book's not on the desk, but then you remember your father putting it back on the shelf. You look at the shelf. There's a few gaps on the shelf. The book you're looking for isn't there.
Could the Reverend make a library use roll?
You can. Are you looking for anything in particular?
He is looking to see whether or not the study is well ordered. It can often reflect the state of one's mind if the study is in a bit of a mess. He was trying to understand his brother as well as understand the state of the study, whether or
You
not it is
absolutely
well.
can. Isaac, what was your psychology roll?
I got an 11 over 30.
Oh, you can see that Thomas is very much in here to find a very specific thing, but he is not letting on. Almost as if he wants to keep it a secret. That's what you know. Reverend, did you make a library use roll?
He certainly did. A 44 out of 50, so...
This study is immaculately organised, to the point where you can see that you could take some pointers back to your chapel about how particular theology and religion text could be reorganized to help not only those of you that study them, but to those of you that worship there. Thomas, you can't find the book you're looking for. Isaac,
Can I well, I'm going to ask Thomas. Young Thomas, is there a particular book you know that me and your father have worked incredibly hard to keep this place in exactly the way that he wanted it? So I'm pretty sure I could help you if you need it.
Thomas is sometimes, I think, a little bit jealous of the relationship that Isaac has with his father. Understandably, because quite often Lord Prideaux would show more friendliness to Isaac than to Thomas. But I think in this situation, Thomas will view Isaac very much as the servant who is there to help. So we'll describe the Bible-looking book to Isaac, seeing whether Isaac has seen it.
you hear the clock tick. You hear it. There's a grandfather clock in the room, and as it clicks, you then hear the first of 12 clicks, the first of 12 gongs, boom, echo out in the room. You describe the book. Isaac looks for it. There is a place in the bookshelf it is missing. Reverend George recognizes the organizational style of the library. It is very much Adam's style of organization that he has known since him and his brother were children. He re-references the books. It is missing. Another few gongs of the grandfather clock pass by. You find yourself standing in the study. Ladies, you're in the ballroom surrounded by guests, but somehow you feel alone. Gentlemen, you're in the study looking for a book that resembles a Bible, but it's absent. You can only make one convincing assumption, and that is that Lord Adam Prideaux took this book with him. Another gong passes through the house. And then the final midnight. And you hear the voices within the house scream and shout up in celebration. Happy New Year! Lots of people, different parts of the house, even the servants downstairs, everybody celebrating. And you find yourselves, ladies, looking at each other, a little lost for words. Gentlemen, again, silence as you look at the space in the bookcase. But you look to each other and you wonder on each other's motives. Who, on this New Year's Eve, really understood what Adam Prideaux was going through? The clock strikes 12. Reverend George Prideaux, you are in Adam's private study. You are standing there. Isaac Chambers, the footman of Adam Prideaux, is there. Thomas Prideaux, his son, is also there. What is it that you do, Reverend?
As each strike of the time marches them on to midnight, he gets that sinking feeling that he's about to have a very interesting year. He looks at Thomas and sees a troubled boy. He knows that somebody who can fleece him of matchsticks that quickly probably has a bit of a problem. He looks at the man next to him, Chambers, and is wondering what kind of man he is, because his brother admires him so much. They've been through so much together that he wants to get to know this person and maybe find out if there were some things that his brother told the servant that he didn't tell his brother. And then he thinks of Charlotte, and he thinks of Anastasia out there, wondering quite how he will relate to these two people in this household, and just hopes that he is able to take them under his wing, because he sees himself as the shepherd stepping into the field of the sheep who need his guidance in the coming year.
Is there anything you say or do in that moment of thinking, reflecting on the people around you, the people that are important to you? You're standing there. You can see that Isaac, your brother's very trusted footman, is searching the desk, searching the bookshelves. You can see Thomas is not frantically, but rather engaged, looking, scanning the bookshelves that you have clocked. You know how they're ordered. You know the book they're looking for, isn't there? Do you just watch them? Do you say anything?
He thinks for a moment, and he just raises his hand and says, Gentlemen, the time. A very happy new year to you both. And he drops his formal look and gives each one a very down-to-earth smile of trying to connect to these people that are in the room with him, just to relax the moment for a second, bring them all together in this moment.
And I'm sure they do. Isaac, you're in that room, you're in that moment, just before the Reverend turns to you and says, Happy New Year's. Just before he does, you're searching that room. You packed his bags. Adam's bags. Adam Prideaux's bags. Lord Adam Prideaux's bags. You packed them. You packed them. Thomas is looking for a book. What do you do, Isaac?
I think first of all, I'm confused. Why and when did Lord Adam pick up this book? I packed everything that he needed. I even gave him his coat. And I didn't see that book go anyway. Do I know what the book is about?
Depends if you know which book is being searched for. If Thomas has described to you the book he's looking for, or at least he mentioned the book that he's looking for, I'm going to ask you for a spot hidden roll.
Okay. Right. Spot hidden. I got a 28 over a 65.
Okay. Okay. So, what I'm going to say is then, on your 28 over a 65, that's a pretty good spot hidden. You look across the desk, there's nothing there. You look at the bookshelves and you see Thomas go to the bookshelves, and as much as you're running across the lines of the bookshelves, you see Thomas doing the same. You see the Reverend looking and almost kind of tutting and shaking his head. There is an order to those books. And the book you're looking for isn't there. You know it. You can see the Reverend knows it. Thomas doesn't. Thomas is still searching. You take a second and you turn to the desk. Lord Adam Prideaux's desk. And you stand where he would stand. You open up one of the drawers. It's full of envelopes, letters that are half written. You close it. You open the next drawer. And in the bottom, you see a pistol. You close it. You go over to the left-hand drawers. You pull open the top drawer. It's empty. It's empty except for the actual drawer itself. The drawer has a symbol engraved in the bottom of it, almost as if it's been carved into with a knife. It is this symbol that you see. It is a circle. And then within the circle, there is, at the bottom, a series of what you can only describe as waves, which lead up to a central mask which branches out as an umbrella with other two circles above it bleeding into the mask, and a singular empty circle above, almost risen above the rest. You see this symbol carved into the bottom of the drawer. Do you tell anybody, Isaac, or do you keep it to yourself?
At this point, especially with the way that the conversation that I had before Adam Prideaux left, I keep it to myself. I close the drawer.
You close the drawer as you hear the final gong of midnight and the good Reverend saying, "Happy New Year!" Anastasia, moments before New Year, you're standing in the grand ballroom. Unless you've moved somewhere else, where are you, Anastasia? What are you doing?
Definitely in the ballroom. Anastasia has been biding her time for Mr. Jenkins to get drunk enough for her to... it's not quite revenge, but it is... He seems like a fitting victim. He seems like he has more than he deserves and that other people would benefit from what he does have more.
Oh, well,
So
Stephen
perhaps
Jenkins. Yeah, he's standing there. He's not quite dancing, but I think he looks like he wishes he was, just kind of swaying on the spot. He's got a glass of champagne in his hand. So, what is it that you do, Anastasia?
Anastasia waits until that minute where it turns midnight and the crowd cheers. Everyone's pairing up, kissing, or whatever they used to do back in maybe they didn't kiss. Maybe it was not appropriate at the time.
A nod from the other side of the room.
Waiting for that kerfuffle, and then either kind of and then bumping into him and trying to take whatever is easiest to take without him realizing.
So you
noise
bump
and there's
into
a lot
him.
of distraction. People are, I assume, kind of bumping into each other a bit, drunk. So it's kind of part of the group.
Okay, I think give us a stealth of hand. That's a ridiculous roll that doesn't exist. Give us a sleight of hand, and I think in that moment he turns to you. So as you're rolling your sleight of hand, he turns to you, bumping into him. Oh, hi there.
Is he drunk at all?
Oh yes, you absolutely recognise that he is very much in his cups.
Does that give me a bonus die?
Prideaux, you are welcome to have a bonus die whilst I try and speak to you, my wonderful darling. Listen, have you ever considered branching out? I know a lot of the chaps say that you're not really, one for the gentlemen, the chats, the soirees, but I think that you and I, if we were to have a couple of dances... You see where I'm going with this?
I rolled a 17 out of 43, which is a hard success. So I take more than one item of value off of him.
Okay, so the things that you're able to find. Firstly, there is an absolutely beautiful silver pocket watch. Nice. That is really is top of the line kind of the pocket watch of the time. It's inscribed, so it's the perfect trophy for Anastasia. But there's also a cigarette case as well that you're able to take, which, again, is very much in Stephen Jenkins' style, inscribed with his initials.
This is very risky business, but
yeah, you're able to take both. But he leans in close. Anastasia, really think about it. You and I, we could be wonderful together. I'll pop round tomorrow when I've had a bit of breakfast and... excuse me, sorry. When I've had a bit of breakfast and that, and we'll really talk about, your father letting you, think about joining my family. Yes?
It seems that you perhaps
sorry.
might benefit from some fresh air. Why don't you take a walk, Mr. Jenkins, around the grounds? It's wonderful at this time.
What a beautiful idea. Merry New Year's. And you hear the gong of midnight.
Watch your
kind
step.
Of clocking. And you see him swaying out amongst the crowd, and he's kind of got a smile on his face, thinking that he's made a connection. Charlotte Lambert, what are you doing during the strike of midnight?
Well, Charlotte is thinking about the past and she's thinking about the future. She's also sort of mentally kicking herself for the little faux pas she made earlier. And she's sort of reflecting that she knows she's made some bad choices in life, but this is going to be the year that she gets back to her rightful place in society. She's very fond of Anastasia, but working as a lady's companion is not really what she'd expected out of life. And although she does understand the reality of her situation as a woman in the Regency period, she is still faintly resentful of the limitations placed on her and the fact that her battle will be fought in the ballroom, in the social realm. And she kind of wishes sometimes that things were a bit different. But she's willing to play the game. She's willing to do what she has to do to get what she wants. preferably through fair means, but foul is not necessarily completely off the table.
So in this moment, as you view the ballroom, you see a number of Anastasias dancing around the floor. You see a number of Thomases taking up the hand of Anastasia's, dancing around, enjoying themselves. Some couples being made here, lots of familial hugs and kisses, lots of things going on. You seem very separate to Ms. Lambert. So what is it that you actually do in this moment? You reflect on the moment, but do you do anything of import?
I think she's just standing there finishing her glass of champagne, just watching what's going on and feeling slightly melancholy, but resolving that this time next year things will be very different.
As you have that desire, that wish, that this time next year things will be different, you see a young lady, not one that you know, you might recognize from some social interactions with Anastasia. She walks towards you with a big smile on her face, glass of champagne in her hand, as she walks towards you. Oh, darling. And Charlotte,
Hello?
you put your hands out as if to hug her. She places her glass in your hand and says, "Thank you very much," and then turns to the dance floor.
Ooh.
And she spins into a gentleman's arms, and they begin their waltz around the room. You have been mistaken for one of the serving class of the family.
Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah.
That hurts her very deeply indeed.
And you hear the gong of New Year's. You hear the start of the New Year's. As you feel that pain of misrepresentation, you feel that pain of oppression, some would say. A new year begins. A new Miss Charlotte Lambert begins, perhaps. Thomas, you are in the study. Your good uncle, the Reverend, is staring at the bookcases as you peruse the books on there. You see Isaac look at the bookcases, turn to the desk and furrow somewhat in the desk before him. Thomas, what is it that you do?
Thomas is frantically looking for this book that he knows was there. He saw it put on the shelf, but which shelf was it? He can't remember. And the chime of the whole clock is ringing in his ears. It's almost like a funeral knell. It's oppressive. Time is ticking away in which he can find this book. He owes it to his father. This father who he's not sure whether he despises or respects. His emotions are high in his head at the moment. The few sherries, multiple sherries, excessive sherries are probably not helping at the moment either. And Thomas slams his hands onto the bookcase, looks up at this wall of literature around him, despairs he's never going to find it. And as the chimes ring and roll over him, he thinks on his father's last words to him before he left on his journey. And from his pocket, he pulls out a small, slim deck of cards he always carries with him. And he looks at it. The last chime of New Year rings, and he can hear his uncle wishing everybody Happy New Year. He looks at the deck of cards and he just says, "Devil take you, father." And slams the cards onto the floor.
At that moment, everybody rejoices. Within the house, there is the resounding Happy New Year. And these are the last moments of the year 1810. For not just the Prideaux family, but for everyone. But for, very importantly, the Prideaux family. Reverend George Prideaux. The new year has rung in. You sit in your brother's study. The door is open. You see a gentleman stumble past. He looks familiar to you. He almost steps and falls as he goes past the door. What do you do?
Is he one of the party guests?
He is.
Okay, so he's got an invitation here, but you say he's drunk.
He looks like he's stumbling through the room, through the hall, past the study.
Okay, does he look injured?
You don't see anything about this individual other than that they are dressed for the evening's entertainment. You recognise them as a guest, this young gentleman, but you see him stumbling through the hallway and going past. But this doesn't lead to the front of the house. It leads to the conservatory, the gardens beyond.
If the other two are occupied, can I get up and leave, or will they notice?
They seem fully occupied. The New Year's rung in. They're very much thinking on their own futures and pasts.
Good. I will just get up nonchalantly, as though nothing is up, as though I'm going for a drink, and leave them to it. And I want to follow this chap out into... You say he's heading... Did you say to the garden area or something?
As you make it into the hall, you see that he's walked through the hallway. You can see that he's gone through, the door's been left open, and you can hear footsteps ahead. It's not even something you have to roll for. He is loudly kind of like stomping around, almost, you hear the foots out of sequence and then kind of steadying themselves, heading out towards the garden.
Okay, I say there, are you lost?
You don't hear a voice in return, but you hear quiet.
The Reverend is going to assume this gentleman has fallen over and hurt himself, so he's going to walk forward and see where this person has gone to. Did he make it to the garden? Maybe he's fallen onto the soft ground.
As you walk out to the edge of the house leading to the outside to the gardens, there's a few stone steps down, there's gravel before you, manicured hedges and bushes and flowers. And as you step out there, you feel the cold embrace of the night, but it's a clear night. The stars are right. And as you stand there, you hear a voice. A few, maybe paths away, a hedge or two away, and you hear the voice almost mumbling to itself. Saying, "Yo, bloody Anastasia, I'll make her my wife. I will. I'll make her my wife. Then we'll see how she treats me and talks to me." What is it you do, Reverend?
The Reverend is not one for drunkards, so walk up to him and say, "Oh, good evening to you, sir. I believe the stars would not appreciate your tone of voice at such a late hour. Perhaps you might accompany me back into the house and leave the grass alone."
He looks at you, and you can see that this man is very much in his cups, and he sees you as the Reverend before him. Says, "Oh, perfect. If I could just get Anastasia here, we might as well just do it now."
The Reverend is... He'll just smile and say, "Back to the house, please."
"No, I'm okay, Father. I think I just need to stretch my, Can I ask you, Reverend, to just quickly, please, make me a power roll?"
Okay. Unexpected. Aha, that is the Reverend with an extreme success. 6 versus 60.
6 over 60. Wow. Okay. So as you're standing there, you're looking at this man who, clearly in an inebriated state, and you feel a shiver ripple up your spine. It starts very much by your coccyx, and you can track every single ripple of this as it just ripples all the way, rivers up your spine, up to the back of your neck, and you end up kind of throwing your shoulders a little bit just to almost just get it out of your system. You see the man in front of you do exactly the same, but he doesn't recognize it in the same way because of his inebriated state. And just, Father, just give me a minute, okay? I just need some air, and I promise, as a good church-going boy, that I will come back into the house in a minute, Father. Just give me a minute to catch my breath. Is that okay?
The father is a little perturbed by what has happened. Yeah, he's actually going to leave the guy to it. He's going to walk back into the house and probably Probably try and find one of the staff, maybe Chambers or something, and hopefully the guy will follow him before him. But
just as you walk back to the house,
he's looking
and
over his shoulder to make sure he's okay.
Yeah, and he seems to be standing there, hands on his hips, occasionally kind of standing more upright, and his feet going. Then he's back up to standing there, and he's kind of looking at the stars and mumbling to himself. But as you walk back across the gravel path back to the house, your breath in the air before you, you take a step inside. And as you take a step inside, you need to make a listen roll, please, Father.
That's a failure. He's probably listening to the wonderful tunes of his wife's on the piano.
You hear the piano, you hear the celebrations inside, the staff moving around. You do still hear this gentleman outside, and you kind of remember his name. You think you may have seen your niece with him, maybe your nephew, but definitely your niece. Is it Mr. Jenkins, you believe? And as Mr. Jenkins is outside and you're about to walk in, you hear a conversation. But there's another voice. Mr. Jenkins is talking to somebody else, and you hear Jenkins say, "Oh, God, who invited you here? My God, man, did you not even bother getting dressed properly? What the hell is that? You can't bring animals here. Look." And there's a sound that you can't quite pick up on the other side of the conversation. You can't hear what's being said.
Okay.
But then you do hear Jenkins say, No, just stay back. Stay back. And then you hear a scream unlike anything you have ever heard of in your entire life. The ripple up your spine that you had moments ago is nothing compared to the shudder you feel now.
The Reverend will be a little stunned and look around to see if other people have heard the screaming. If there's any kind of serving staff nearby, he'll sort of like stop them rather hurriedly and say, I say, go to the study and find Mr. Chambers for me. Will you please send it to the garden at once?
Yes, sir.
The Reverend is going to make his way back out to the garden and probably chastise himself for not making sure the gentleman came in with him.
As you run back outside, your feet on the gravel crunching away, your breath in the air, you get to where you stood speaking to Mr. Jenkins just a moment before, and then as you stand there, you look around. There is no one there. There is no one to be seen. Could you give me a spot hidden, please?
That is a failure, unfortunately. 69 versus 29.
In the night sky, and the stars are, as we've said, bright and shining bright, the garden is quite beautifully illuminated, but it is night. There is one thing you can see. In between your feet on the gravel path, you can see the indents in the gravel where Mr. Jenkins was standing. But there is no other trace of his person. He seems to have vanished into thin air. Thank you for joining us for Act 2 of Cult and Culpability. Remember to visit us at www.miskatonicplayhouse.com. You can also visit the main stage of the Miskatonic Playhouse for other adventures from the Miskatonic repository with links in the show notes below. Until next time, when the curtain rises again.